Everybody for attending tonight. We'll call to order the March 28th meeting of the Fredericksburg Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
He graduated.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Play ball.
All right. Ms. Chandler, will you please call the roll?
From Spotsylvania County, Mr. Tim McLaughlin, Mr. Chris Yakubowski,
Here.
Mr. David Ross, Mr. Kevin Marshall, Ms. Deborah Frazier, Ms. Lori Haynes.
Here.
From the city of Fredericksburg, Mr. Jason Graham.
Here.
Mr. Matt Kelly.
Here.
Mr. Tim Baruti.
Here.
Mr. David Brown. From Stafford County, Ms. Meg Bonke.
Here.
Ms. Monica Gary.
Here.
Ms. Crystal Panuch. Ms. Pamela Young.
Yes.
Here. Mr. Darrell English. The representative from the Secretary of Transportation, Ms. Marcy Parker. Here. Ms. Michelle Shropshire. Here. From Potomac and Rappahannock Transportation Commission, PRTC, Dr. Bob Schneider.
Here.
Mr. Joe Stainsby. A roll call has been conducted and a quorum is present, and then Mr. Ollis had passed around for the non-voting members a sign-in sheet, so if you haven't gotten that.
Thank you, Ms. Chandler. All right, now it's time for the approval of the March 28th Policy Committee agenda.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Abstentions? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Now it's time for public involvement. Comments and questions from members of the public are welcome at this time. Staff will also read comments submitted by the public prior to the meeting. Is there anyone here from the public who wishes to speak? Jules, do we have any comments?
It's not for the public hearing, not for the public.
All right. Then we will move on to item 6, the public hearing. Comments and questions from members of the public related to the congestion management process and FY 21 through 24 transportation improvement program are welcome at this time. Staff will also read comments submitted by the public prior to the meeting. First, do we have anyone here from the public who wishes to comment? All right, Mr. Ollis?
Our new member is going to read the comments from the public that we've received. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Coley Fuzel, and I am the new Public Involvement Title VI Coordinator.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me. The tip public comments we received often makes sense studying how to make improvements to the Route 3 and Route 1 exchange. And Larry Jewell, the projects added are fine, but you need to address the absolute necessity of a river crossing west of I-95. And then for the public comment, comments. Yes, the poor attention to safety for pedestrians and bicyclists on Route 1 and 3 and Lafayette Boulevard in Fredericksburg. There's not even any mention in the congestion report. I hope FAMPO noticed that the Secretary of Transportation yesterday says will not give money to those who do not prioritize safety for pedestrians and bicyclists. And Rupert Farley, I would recommend formation of a legislative committee to lobby for abolition of the regulations forbidding congestion pricing on established roadways. Perhaps statewide associations of cities and counties could unite on this effort. If the politicians want FAMPO policy and their peers are afraid the voters would react unfavorably to this lobbying, I would at least expect them to institute some programs to educate the public of the benefits of applying congestion pricing instead of the expensive sprawl-inducing projects to which they have been restricted. One such educational program would be the attachment of disclaimers to all proposed capacity-adding projects, the purpose of which would be to alert the public that there is an alternative that is cheaper, faster, healthier, and more environmentally friendly, but which unfortunately FAMPO is not allowed to use. And then we received some fantastic feedback from CDOT, which we're very grateful for your detail, and I'll spare you those comments so we can continue the meeting. But thank you very much.
We
Thank you.
We have noted all of the VDOT comments, and they're all in the pack.
Thank you, as always, for your assistance, CDOT. All right, at this time, does anyone wish to remove anything from the consent agenda?
Move the consent agenda as submitted.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. All right, Mr. Ollis, FAMPO Administrator Report.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Can we move straight on to the next slide? I'm just going to talk about new staffing, studies, and a kind of a quick thumbnail overview of all the studies that are going on that are right now particularly relevant, and then talk about the FAMPO vision. First studies I want to talk about are the project pipeline studies, which were initiated at the approval of the CTB by VDOT and are managed by VDOT together with DRPT. And there are in each region, I think each district across the state, there are pipeline studies on the go right now. We have a bunch in our region. Some of the newer members may not be aware of that, so we're just giving you a quick overview of them. The goal is to focus on solutions. There's the actual text from the pipeline studies. Solutions that identify VTRAN's midterm needs with a performance-based planning approach. It's expected that preferred alternatives will be pursued for funding through appropriate statewide or federal programs for implementation to address those needs. The pipeline studies are funded by the CTB locations chosen by VDOT districts. There are 5 pipeline studies that are run out of this VDOT district, and 4 of the 5 are in the FAMPO region. Those studies that are in our region are these, on Route 3, 2 on Route 1, and 1 at I-95 exit 136, Route 1, Centerport Parkway vicinity. Those are the 4 that are in our particular region. Next slide. Where exactly is that? This section of Route 3 from the I-95 back through there, so through Central Park, Spotsylvania Town Center area, all the way past Salem Church Road, Gordon Road, etc., out to the west. That's the one particular vicinity that is being studied right now. The other one is, the next one is on Route 1 between the city and Spotsylvania County, looking at that particular section of roadway. Here is the Centerport Parkway vicinity. That particular area is being studied. And then the last one is in the very north of Stafford County on Route 1, just before you get into Prince William County. Those are the locations that are being studied in terms of things like congestion and accessibility and so on, to look for projects that meet the VTRAN's approved needs. And multiple proposals are made through these studies in these locations, and then it's up to the jurisdictions to decide on which parts of those projects they would like to see developed, and then either apply for smart scale funding through this round of smart scale, or future rounds, or possibly other funding sources if they wish to proceed with those. Next slide.
Actually, Mr. Olson, if you don't mind, sorry, if you just go back, I do have a quick question for you.
Absolutely.
The Route 3 study, could you help me understand the differences between that study and then the portion of the East-West Mobility study, and what they would be looking for that's different?
So this particular section, it's a very short, narrow, focused section of roadway where there's a very specific VTRAN's set of needs.
Okay.
And that section of roadway is being looked at in terms of congestion, movements on the road that are problematic, how to cross that road. The East-West study is a regional project looking at 13 different roads, including Route 3, but not just that little section of Route 3, a much broader and more long-term look at that. We're looking at what congestion and accessibility would look like in the whole of Route 3 out to the year 2050. So the time horizon is longer,
okay,
and a much bigger portion of Route 3, for example.
Okay.
These are very narrow, focused, very specific, trying to lead to small-scale applications in most cases.
I see.
Representing that fairly. Yes, sir.
Oh.
Free to jump in.
All right. And then I know Ms. Young had a question as well.
Yeah.
I wanted to know, was there any entertainment in terms of the congestion on Route 1 over in front of Aquia and 610? Because when you're talking north of Stafford, this is actually one of our biggest problems right now.
So are you saying that outside of this section of roadway, there should be more study?
Yes, I mean, the study should be concentrating over
I'm
95,
looking at VDOT who chose the particular area to comment.
95, 610.
There's a study there that Steve's gonna explain to you.
I'm sorry?
We,
Steve can explain that.
we performed a STAR study, probably 3 years ago, in that area, in the Garrettsville Road, Route 1 intersection area there, went all the way down to, several signals to the south, and basically looked at congestion. When we do a STAR study, STAR stands for Strategically Targeted and Affordable Roadway Solutions. So we're looking for projects that can be built, with a relatively small budget, not just, not going in and adding multiple lanes, but how can we adjust existing intersections, anything we can do with innovative intersections, signals and stuff. And so there's a study, there's a set of recommendations with that, and the county or GWC FAMPO could actually decide to, use SmartScape applications to address those studies. But I'd be happy to show you what the recommendations of that study were offline.
Sure.
So a study was done, and it would be up to your county or FAMPO or GWRC to decide to pick the results of that study and apply for funding to implement them. So it's up to the county to decide whether those study recommendations are things that you want to implement.
Can you share that with me? We'll talk about it.
Sure. Next one. So the consultants are working with VDOT to suggest solutions in those particular areas, and those jurisdictions will then select from those solutions what's applicable for inclusion in SmartScale. So Carrie will do a presentation just now where she'll talk about what happens to this, right? I'm telling you how we got there, and Carrie's going to tell you now what we do with the results of this when it comes out. Because some of these will become SmartScale applications, which you'll all vote on before August the 1st. And that is later on in the agenda today. So that's what pipeline is. The 4 studies that VDOT is organized, that the CTB has funded, which we are participating in, and the outcomes you can pick and choose in your jurisdictions to fund, to apply for funding, to implement or not to implement, as the case is. The East-West study you mentioned earlier, just a recap for those who aren't familiar. It had 2 phases to assess east-west movements of people and goods from now until 2050 and determine what accessibility and congestion shortcomings there are and design solutions to complement work already underway on the north-south movements. A lot of funding is spent on I-95 upgrades. The rail system, we're adding the 3rd track, upgrading stations, a lot of that's being done, and some improvements are made on Route 1 and even the replacement to Harry Nice Bridge. Those are all north-south movements. So we, with this study, are trying to look at east-west movements. When you get off the I-95, when you get off of Route 1, when you get off of 301 or Route 3, or, well, not Route 3, 301 or the train system, how do you get to your destination, or how do you get from your destination to those major roadways? We looked at transit connections to transit and transit roadways and bike ped in phase 2. Phase 1 is just about complete. Phase 2, we've just appointed the consultants. You'll remember you took a decision to approve the funding and appoint the consultants recently. Next slide. We're looking at 13 roadway corridors for future accessibility and congestion. 7 of those, we want to get them to a level of SmartScale readiness so that if you like them, your jurisdiction can say, fine, we want that one. So we're trying to get a large number of projects so that you have some to pick and choose between. If you don't like one, you can pick 3 and 5 and make those SmartScale applications in the next round, or you can apply for build grants or raise grants or whatever the case is. And then a higher level analysis of I-95 access points. We've seen that the County of Spotsylvania and the city both are interested in 1 or more additional access points to the I-95, and we're just doing a high-level analysis of that. There are 4 bike-ped multi-use paths that we're looking at in this process, taking some of those to SmartScale readiness as well. Access to the train stations. How are we going to get people in the future to the train stations? we're upgrading the whole train system, but how do you get there, right? So all of that. And then looking at two particular transit projects, a high-capacity transit route connecting Spotsylvania Town Center, Central Park, with the University of Mary Washington, downtown Fredericksburg, and the train station. That's a big movement of people. Route 3 is very congested. What should transit on that route look like? And then a new transit center in Stafford, where we're saying you're going to build a great new Stafford downtown center. What plan is there in place in the future for you to have a transit center where buses can connect, can transfer people from one bus to another, and we're going to suggest locations. The consultant's going to evaluate those and work with the county to say where's appropriate. So before all the land is built up, there's at least one location where the buses can stop, right? Because once you built an area up to go and try and retrofit transit, very expensive. You've got to buy the land when it's worth even more. It's better to plan it now. And then access to the train stations, etc. Next slide. Next steps, the consultant will evaluate the transit work we've already done in phase 1 and make some draft recommendations. The draft report will be put out for public comment and for your comment. Then we're moving into roadways, which they're about to commence now in the next month. The consultants have already started work on that. And then we're going to look at what they identify as the detailed problems on those 13 roadway corridors, what we should be doing to fix them in the short term and in the long term. So some projects will be fix it now, some projects the response will be don't do anything now, but before 2050 you need to have a plan to fix the congestion on that particular roadway. Next one. DCR rail. That's the Virginia Central Railway, not railroad, railway, tunnel and bridge study. The consultant is evaluating options to cross US Route 1, Route 3, and the I-95 highway to connect up that whole BCR trail, and particularly these two routes, Route 1, Route 3, there is a kind of crossing now at grade, and the concern is that in the future, as the Blue and Grey Parkway gets higher and higher volumes of traffic, it might expand. Is that really a safe crossing? It works for now. So the proposal from the city, I believe originally, before my time, was to look at whether a bridge there would be appropriate. We're also looking at a culvert underneath to see whether that would be better. And then the big one, the I-95 highway, do we put a tunnel under it? Do we build a culvert under it? Do we build a bridge over it? Do we go around some other route and go on Harrison Road or whatever? So we're paying a consultant to go and take measurements, to go and crawl in tunnels, to go and have a look at what's there, to look at the studies that have been done in the past, and come up with a solution that would be able to be submitted to either Smart Scale or one of the other funding systems if it's practical. And so we're hiring experts to go and find out and tell us whether it's practical or not and how we would do that. So either bridges or tunnels or culverts or some other method that they can suggest that would make that work. There's been a short delay, VDOT's getting just federal approval for that project to commence, but the consultant is ready and waiting, and we'll start imminently as soon as we get the go-ahead on that. That's where that study is. And then the FAMPO Future Vision, I've been asking this question for some time of you all and of the TAC and the CTAC and so on. Look at the next slide. What I'm proposing to do is we've been talking in the committee. I asked you, remember last time, to give me the first sentence that you think of when you think, what should we have as our vision for FAMPO? What I would like to do now is develop a committee survey where the committee members and members of the public who attend our committees, I'll send you a survey, short one this time, not the big thing we did last year, short one, just asking you some questions about what you think the vision of FAMPO should be. I'm going to compile those and start drafting a vision document. Then I'll bring you, short thing, 3-page vision document for you to read, what do they say, read, inwardly digest, pull apart, and come back, and then we'll work on a short vision statement for FAMPO with some points of what we're trying to achieve, so that we try and focus our future work in one direction. But it's up to you to decide what that is. I'm just going to facilitate a process. I hope that kind of process will be good for you. It keeps it simple, short document. Next slide. Way forward, we have a new staff member. She spoke to you just now. Won't you stand up again? That's Curly. She has come to rescue us from ourselves. Curly is taking over our public engagement work, so managing social media, Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all the other accounts that we have. She's going to be making pamphlets and flyers when we need to tell the public about our project, running our website and updates to the website, doing occasional table at a farmer's market if we need to get the word out about something, and also some local committee work, getting the word out about transportation projects, what we are doing, getting public input. For 3 months, we had 3 months, 3 months, we didn't have an officer, and you could already see our public engagement was starting to drop because we weren't getting the word out there quite as well as we should have. Now we have Coley. Welcome. Glad to have you take over, and also doing our Title VI work. We have to keep records of our committees, how many public engagements we have, who those folks are, etc. I'm working with GWRC and the new executive director there on salary scales and professional development for our staff. We lost a couple of staff recently, and we want to boost our efforts at making the staff feel welcome, paying them the appropriate scales, whatever those are. So we're just doing a review of that. That will be rolled into the budget process, which GWRC will be working on in the next couple of months. The congestion management process is now in the LRTP, and there's the link on the website. We're required to tell you about it, but also it's now finished. It's now been out for public comment. You had the hearing a moment ago. It is now part of the long-range transportation plan, just updating you as to where to find it now. Mr. Chair, that's all I have for this particular item. Unless there are questions, happy to move on.
Thank you, Mr. Hollister. Do you have any questions or comments?
Great.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the action and discussion items. 9A, the Spring CTB Public Meeting, Fiscal Year 23-28 SYIP.
So we've received notification from VDOT. It's awkward having to talk about VDOT so much when they're in the room, but here I get to do it again. We work very well with VDOT. Really? What did I tell you earlier? I don't have any secrets. The CTB is having their, I think it's biannual public engagement process. Is it biannual?
Yes, we do it every spring, sometimes we do it in the fall.
Okay, so once or twice a year. Last year we only had it once. So the spring engagements are about to kick off. We received a letter from VDOT indicating that our region is going to be having a public meeting, and there are the details for you. 4 p.m., Monday, the 25th of April, at the James Monroe High School on Washington Avenue. And we're encouraging members to attend. What we'd like to do tonight is just get an indication of who is available from the policy committee members to attend, because we'd like to ask one or two of you to actually go there and speak about, well, first of all, issues that are of concern to you, but we've also got those items that we put in the letter, which we sent to the Secretary of Transportation, which represent some issues that we're collectively concerned about. And they're on that list, which is in the letter. Things like we'd like the technical guide of smart scale to be finished a little earlier so that we can prep our projects better, and so on. They're all listed there. You've seen the letter in your pack before. You saw the letter when I sent it out. You saw it last year. You've seen it 10 times. But we'd like to just find out who is available from the members to attend and speak at the meeting. I'm happy to go. I can speak to the more technical things, like what is Measure A1, for example, might not be something that a policy committee member might know ready to hand. I'm happy to speak to the more technical ones, but the broader items on there you might wish to raise. And we're not saying this is what you must speak about. We're just saying we agreed these items. Feel free to add whatever it is you feel as members passionately about, but we'd like to remind the CTB of the things that concern us about transportation. So I don't know if you just want to see who's available.
Sure.
We don't need any decision tonight.
Yes, Mr. Kelly.
I'd be happy to be there, even though it is going to crimp on the Anzac party. It's Anzac Day for anybody who celebrates it. But the other question I have on that is, for years, we have been kind of pounding away on also changes in the smart scale evaluation process. Is it going to bring that up again, or are we just going to stick to timing numbers and? I didn't see,
There are about 5 items in there which speak,
I was looking at.
speaks to smart scale. One of those is that we're suggesting that instead of there being just 2 categories of region by size, we're suggesting that a middle category gets created because everything's either a small region or a large region, and so you either get a small number of applications or a large number. And if you look at that table, we're suggesting there should be a middle group, which would get a middle number. So jurisdictions or localities up to 100,000 would get, am I right?
Well, yes, it starts less than 100,000.
Yeah.
And then,
So it would be 5 applications. When you get to a medium range size jurisdiction, you would get 8 applications, and if a very large jurisdiction, you would get 12 applications, for example. So we're indicating that instead of just having 2 sizes, you split the application into 3 size jurisdictions, so it would result in our region getting more slots to submit projects to smart scale.
Well, I understand that. If you go back, I think we made close to 17 different recommendations actually in the smart scale process from the standpoint of how far do you consider for commuting, distances, the weighted, basically we've got 2 transportation authorities who get, because they can put so much money on their projects, get weighted towards them. And there's other little issues that we've talked about for years that we wanted to see, traffic counts, because we were worried about traffic counts on weekends and things. I know some of the smaller changes have been made over time, but there's still a lot of them in there that, and again, we've been pounding on it for years. I just don't know if we want to give up, just say, okay, well, now we're just going to worry about the number of applications we get, or are we going to still focus on the rating process itself?
There are 2 measures in there that specifically talk about the rating process, but not 17. So perhaps we've reduced them to this group, but we'd like you to go pound on at least these, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So if we can pound on these, there are about, how many, Jordan, points are there?
There's 5 specific for smart scale and V-Trans.
And then another 3 or 4 for particular things that are not smart scale related. So it's about 9 or so.
so is that like number 3 that I saw there was about commuting?
Yeah, number 3 is increasing from 5 minutes to 60 minutes.
That's right. That's one of the original proposals we had.
The weekend hours.
So we've baked in a number of those.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Matt Kelly says he's prepared to go and speak. Is there one other perhaps?
Done.
Sorry?
Done it for.
Yes.
Does anybody else from a neighboring locality?
Great.
Thank you.
And then I'll accompany them as well, so there'll be 3 of us.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Moving on to item 9B, Smart Scale, round 5. Ms. Barber.
Now she's going to tell you what happens to those
You're going to find the hearing.
pipeline studies.
Never.
Okay. All right, so this is just a brief update on Smart Scale. You all have seen all of the projects that I'm going to talk about. We can probably go, you guys saw this last month, what the acronym stands for, what the process basically is, and that is in your packet if you'd like to go that further. Next slide. So right now we are wrapping up March. April 1st, all the pre-applications are due, and throughout April, VDOT is going to assess pre-application, and there'll be some back and forth conversations to get everything sorted out before the first time. Slide. So these are our projects. We have 5 on FAMPO and 5 on GWRC. As you know, only 4 full applications are going to be allowed for the final application process. So we are going to try in May, but it may not be until June when I come to you with the tax recommendations and our recommendations on how to prioritize them. And the reason for the delay is the pipeline project that he was speaking about earlier. Next slide. All right, I'll just move very quickly through the first one in Stafford, US 1 Lay Hill intersection improvements. This is a sidewalk and a new bus stop in this area. Next slide. This was from a project pipeline study. Stafford has selected to do turn lane improvements at US 1 and Route 628. left and right turn lanes. Next slide. Warrenton Road, US 70 Business, a sidewalk from Old Forge Drive to Solomon Drive on the south side, I believe.
For those folks who think that we don't spend any money and any priority on sidewalks, just keep looking at these projects and count how many sidewalks we're actually putting into this process.
Almost all of them have a bike ped component.
Yeah.
And this was, we were talking about STAR studies. This particular project came from a previous STAR study. Next slide. And this one is in the city and part of down towards the Pennsylvania line, widening Dixon Street to 4 lanes, and then having a sidewalk this way, and then a shared use path this way that connects with the existing shared use path park. And all of this is going to connect to a Pennsylvania project for a shared use path that continues on down Route 2. Next slide. This one, more sidewalks. Sidewalks on the east side of Lafayette Boulevard in several places, fill some gaps, and a transit improvement at Wellington Woods, where the apartment complex is. There'll be a new northbound stop to pair with existing stops.
And 2 intersection improvements.
Hmm?
And intersection improvements.
Yes,
I believe too.
at Old Greenwich Drive. Next slide. This is a VCR regional project composed of the Bankside Trail, which is going to go down along the river. And then there's a little connector here so that we can connect to the existing VCR trail. And then the extension that goes to 95. Hopefully we'll be able to get a tunnel one of these days to continue it on. Next slide. And this is a I-95 8-lane widening, both north and southbound from 130 to 126. Next slide. This is one of the pipeline studies currently under development. It's basically looking at safety improvements like restricted lefts and things like that throughout that corridor. And that's going to be, I will have a much better idea of what that is comprised of next time. Next slide. Additionally, same thing with this one, US 1, Lassen Lane to Idlehouse Boulevard. It will consist of roadway improvements and low-cost bike ped improvements from Harrison Road north towards the city. Next slide. Massaponax Corridor, this is a shared use path down Route 1, and also a shared use path towards Massaponax High School entrance. And lastly, a King Station roundabout and shared use path. So lots of good infrastructure down there. Next slide. So next steps. Today, we are seeking verbal approval of the 10 pre-applications. I presented this earlier to GWRC, it's the same thing. We are submitting the pre-applications right now. We'll have them in by the 1st, and the rest is getting feedback from VDOT.
All right, Ms. Barber, if you wouldn't mind, just before we do the pre-approval, just for everyone else, could you mind going back to the list of projects, or Jordan, if you don't mind, just so everyone can see, and that, and also just for everyone's awareness, there is a split. There's the GWRC list, and then there's a FAMPO list, and so only those last 5 projects that we saw, VCR Regional Project, the I-95 widening Gordon Road, Lassen Lane, and the Massaponax project are the ones that FAMPO will be putting down from 5 to 4.
So may I ask if it's 4 on both sides?
Each body will have to essentially take one project out of their respective lists.
So we submit 5 and 5 next week, this week. VDOT will look at them, give us some comments and feedback, and we might have a look at their comments and feedback. And then by June, maybe in May, we will have to, the 2 boards will have to look at their 2 lists and choose one to remove, so that you go from 5 to 4 at FAMPO and 5 to 4 at GWRC.
And every district has one.
Yes. So if you look at the list for FAMPO, for example, then let's see, Stafford counties. Actually, Stafford counties are all on the GWRC side. It looks like, and then Spotsylvania has more on the FAMPO side. The city has a couple in each.
And these are in addition to the projects that each locality has already submitted independently of us.
Yes.
So we do the regional lists. Each of your localities has submitted their own individual lists as well. So Caroline and King George have also had the opportunity and submitted their projects. We just do the combined regional project.
Correct. Ms. Bonke.
Mr. Chair, and Carrie, I brought this up at GWRC. I asked some other questions about this project, but I need to ask this, even though this isn't a FAMPO project. You pointed to the Lay Hill Road. If we could go back to that. You said the bus stop will be here.
Well, no, I'm not certain on here. I have the information back at my desk, exactly where the bus stop is.
Okay, thank you, because where I saw you
Yes.
point, I'm like, there's no way you can put a bus stop there. That's a terrible turn. And, okay, thank you.
No connection to where I'm pointing.
Okay.
We have bus stop where one belongs.
Okay, and will that red line continue of the sidewalk that's on the north side, or does it stop right there midstream on the north side? Yeah, if you keep going, right there.
The sidewalk is the pink line.
Oh, the sidewalk?
Yeah, the sidewalk is this pink line.
Oh, and then it stops. So what's the red line?
The red line is bus shelter. Yeah. So it looks like that's gonna be here?
But Ms. Bomke's question is still relevant on the sidewalk, just kind of stopping, sidewalk
Yeah.
nowhere?
Right, and I don't understand when there's one person that owns that big property right there. I don't know why you would put a bus stop there when all the people live across the street.
How about this? I will get back with you
Okay,
on this.
yeah, we got
All the details, because I have it.
Your county has already, staff have already dug into this in quite a lot of detail, and is this a pipeline study? No.
Yeah.
So the county has dug into this in some detail to look at where the best location is for all of these items and given us this information. So we've got this information from your county plus input from VDOT.
Yeah, this is a sketch from VDOT. This was a prior smart scale application.
Yes, it was.
Not a new one, yeah.
It's been-
Okay, well then I'll talk to staff.
What's that?
The red lines are proposed right.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
They're not sidewalks. And then the large area that's kind of south
This
of
one?
Lay Hill, that would be an area for stormwater management.
Okay.
Oh, thank you, that is not a bus stop.
So we've got,
That is very different.
we've got engineers right here in the room and we're fiddling with.
I have not taken
Okay.
a class on how to read.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you. Whew, okay, got it.
There's going to be a very angry worded email to staff.
Thank you, Michelle. That's very helpful.
All right.
Kind of a block out area that we, there's kind of a placeholder, so we,
Okay,
if it would be selected, then we would define how to deal with stormwater management, but we have to show it.
gotcha, thank you very much.
There we go. It's not the bus stop.
All right.
Apologies to all.
All right. So we do have this listed as an action item. Mr. Olson, is this something, this is more of a verbal than a,
Yes, with this stage, VDOT, I think, is looking for a verbal commitment to these 5 projects. When we've reduced it to 4 projects in a month or 2 months, we will need a written endorsement from FAMPO to support those 4 final projects that will be submitted. So if you could just tell us now that you're happy with these so that we can press the button on by the 1st and submit them to VDOT, we'd be happy with that. We don't need a formal document at this stage.
everybody? Good so far? Wonderful. All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that, Ms. Barber. Moving on to item 9C, Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Improvement Program, Surface Transportation Block Grant Program update.
This is one of those things, Jordan will make the presentation, but this is one of those things which gets revised 100 times before we bring you the final copy. So by the time we get to the policy committee, the presentation is already out of date slightly. So forgive us that, this is what we presented to the TAC. Now a couple of weeks have gone by. We already have new information, but we're not going to confuse everything by sharing you the changes with you. We'll do that in due course. Jordan will just tell you what the TAC knows, so you can see we're working on this. Thank you.
Next slide. So in the modified call for projects that you all had approved, we received 3 active transportation applications for CMAQ funding. And we held a screening call with each of the applicants, and we determined that all the projects screened in, and we moved on to the scoring process. On the next slide shows you an overview of the scores as a result of that scoring process. And then we're showing the draft allocations for CMAQ funding, which is congestion mitigation funding. So based on the 3 applications that we received, since Harrison Road BCR Trail scored the highest based on our methodology, they received half of the available funding for each year. And then the other two projects received these are the requests that they asked for. And then on the next slide shows the allocations we drafted, and then each fiscal year where the funding is coming from.
And it looks messy like that because our policy says we take the money that's allocated each year and we divide it up according to formulas which are in the policy. So it makes up all those little pieces which we then add up to the total that gets allocated to the project. Very complicated. If you saw really how hard it is to put this thing together, you would feel sorry for the poor people at VDOT and the poor people at FAMPO that have to sit, and I've sat with them now physically and done it once myself. It's a headache. The more you do it, the more you just ignore everybody and do what you want, right? I'm kidding.
It gets better.
So the next is for the STBG, the Surface Walk Grant funds and the HIP funds. So these are the funds that were on our sheet as listed as needs. And then the next slide shows the draft allocations that we proposed and which fiscal year the funding is coming from. Again, like Ian said, this is based on the methodology project selection process that you guys had approved at the January meeting. And then lastly, the next step. So we're discussing the scores and draft allocations. We also just received the new SIP budget from VDOT, so we'll be presenting that to the TAC. And then in May, we're going to seek endorsement from the TAC and approval from you guys. And then in June, this will go to the CTB for approval and implementation. And then in September, we'll start up the process all over again for the next fiscal year.
So we're currently in the middle of the hissing and slapping and talking nicely to Susan, begging her to be nice to our projects and arguing, and it'll get revised 12 more times, and then we'll present you in a month or so the final list, which you can take action on. But it's a work in progress. And it's complicated because we were told there's a little bit of additional money available, so now we've got to go back and find projects to put those on, and each project's got so many little reasons why they can't get this money and why they have to get that money, and it's a mess. But it eventually comes right, and we'll present you with a final list. Thank you, Jordan.
Yeah, and then just the other item that was on the agenda is just a very detailed spreadsheet of where all the money goes.
Oh, yes.
You don't want to know what's on that. You just want to know what the conclusion is, and if we and VDOT agree, we'll present you, and you can look at the conclusion, and if you want to, we'll give you that big spreadsheet again, and you can go mad, but it's a headache.
No, we've seen that spreadsheet enough. No. All right, thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Chandler? No? All right. Moving on to item 9D, the 2050 LRTP. Mr. Ollis.
Long-range transportation plan. It's on the website. I just want to tell you a couple of quick things and then you to just make a decision. There it all is, folks. 4 years, almost 4 years of work. There it all is on the website. It's broken up in 7 chapters. You can download separately. We have now, Stephen will be happy to know, got all of the appendices online, fully complete, except for the resolutions, because you haven't signed the resolution yet, but we will add that. This year it's different for a couple of quick reasons, which I'll tell you. The first one is we've got to separate out the rural long-range transportation plan because the feds said to us, you can't include that in your FAMPO one, you need to separate it out. So Carrie with some support created a separate GWRC rural long-range transportation plan, which was approved a year ago. So we cut all of that out of the FAMPO long-range transportation plan because we were asked to. So it's different because of that. Secondly, it's different because we've now put the congestion management process into the long-range transportation plan so that you can find everything in one document. And as we did previously, we've included the active transportation plan in the long-range transportation plan. These other documents are the revenue projection, the environmental justice analysis was shortened, performed. There's even acronyms and a glossary of terms, which is, how many pages was it? I gave it to you guys the other night. Anyway, it's all there. We also tried to not focus on volume, but focus on content. We could have made this thing another 200 pages, but we actually decided the goal here is not to make the biggest document in the universe. The goal here is to get the right content. So we sometimes actually cut and made it a little shorter, a little bit more focused, because it doesn't need to be the longest document in the world. And we've got a couple of new insights in terms of scenario planning. What happens if we get more in terms of population than we're planning? What happens if we get more jobs than we think are going to be here? What happens if we get more transit than we were anticipating? How does that affect congestion, the roadways, etc.? Perhaps a better, more full, new scenario planning exercise should be done next time. But I think it's a great project. I want to thank all of the staff that are here tonight, as well as the staff, 3 of whom have moved on to jobs elsewhere, that also worked very heavily on this project. I want to thank all of them as well. I think it's been a great effort. It took a little longer because of COVID, so there was a hiatus in the middle, and FAMPO administrator changed in the middle of this, so it did change. It's taken a little longer, but it is done tonight. It is complete, and we're asking you to adopt the LRTP tonight, and there's a resolution in your pack to do that. I think it's a great effort, and I think, I may stand corrected, but I think this is the first one in the state of Virginia that is the 2050 update. Other places like Richmond have only just adopted their 2045 update, and they've just started the 2050 update. We tonight are finished. So this is a very long process, but we've completed it quicker than I think any other region in the state of Virginia. And I think it's a good job. We've got some really good comments from folks. There's always something that we could improve on. Happy to acknowledge that. And we will start the next process about a year from now. So for now, we've got a year when we don't have to do LRT.
Well, thank you so much for that. Do we have any questions or comments from Solis on the LRTP?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
As a CTAC chairman, I just wanted to inform the policy committee that CTAC declined to endorse the long-range transportation plan. There were several reasons for that. The predominant reason was its failure to address another crossing of the Rappahannock River west of I-95 Route 1. We'll be happy to come in at some date and brief you as to our concerns, but I want to make sure you are aware that although we were asked to endorse it, we don't vote on it, we declined to endorse it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Do we have any other questions or comments?
I would just like to say that I'm speaking as a representative of BPAC. BPAC did vote to endorse the LRT.
Thank you, Ms. Barber. Any other questions, Ms. Bonke?
So, Mr. Chairman, Ian, were there other reasons in addition to what the chairman of CTAC indicated as far as why they didn't endorse it?
I believe there were 3 different perspectives, but Carrie was actually in the meeting. I got it secondhand.
He was not in the meeting. Becky was.
Sorry, CTAC, I beg your pardon. I was not in the meeting, but I did get detailed feedback. I believe there were 3 different things. Jane Lee made some comments, Rupert made some comments, the chairman made some comments. Do you want to just give a thumbnail?
Yes. Mr. Farley, one of the no votes to endorsement, indicated that he felt that the projects in the LRTP, that there were too many road widenings and new roads that contribute to congestion and sprawl. And Ms. Leeds gave us great comments and feel that more attention needs to be given to accessibility for the disabled in the goals and some of the project priorities.
Okay, so...
And the comments that the chairman just made, that they would like to see another river crossing west of the river.
Okay, but there's no reason to really hold up our plan at this point in time, but those are items that we could take into consideration and discuss next year. Is that correct?
You can, I mean, VDOT are here to correct me if I'm wrong, but you can update the LRTP every year, am I right? Every second year, you can make amendments. Sorry, I shouldn't use the word update. I'm learning my American terminology still. This is a full update, but you can make amendments in between full updates. So you could add or subtract a project, but it is a complicated and time-consuming process, because if you want to add a project that is not in the constrained long-range plan, you have to have air quality conformity analysis if it is a roadway project, which requires the Air Quality Conformity Committee to be constituted, including federal highways members and federal transit members. You have to also have an EPA certification. So it takes time. It takes you 6 months to do that. It's not something you can tonight say, hey, let's add a sidewalk. You have to go follow all the steps.
Your comment about 6 months is interesting. I would remind the policy committee that in your September packet, there was a letter from CTAC chairman, my predecessor, expressing concern about the absence of any kind of a study or action regarding an additional crossing. To date, we have heard absolutely nothing concerning that topic or any response from the policy committee to that letter 6 months ago.
You'll remember the letter was tabled in the policy committee meeting.
Yes.
All right. The chairman of CTAC did come to the meeting and explain the letter, and I believe there was a little discussion, but it was decided that further discussion with CTAC members should happen. There was no decision taken in the meeting to do a particular thing about it.
Correct. I remember. Ms. Young?
Yeah, the long-range transportation plan.
Yes.
For example, Garrison, if we dust off that plan, is it already in the long-range plan, or does it have to be added as an amendment if we wanted that in?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I can look at the list and send you an email. There's a list specifically for studies on there, so I can just confirm.
There is another study which has some funding already for 610. Do you remember the details of the plan? Anyway, there's some money allocated for a study in Stafford on 610, which has not been initiated. In other words, some money was allocated to it, but the county has yet to take action to either start the study and get a consultant or ask us to complete the study on your behalf, or whatever the case is. It probably is not sufficient money to complete the study, but I think it's about $75,000 that was allocated to it, and we're waiting for further information from the county as to know how much, what you want to do with that study. That's not in the LRTP, but it is in that nice spreadsheet that Susan and I get to fight about so often. It's in there. There's $75,000 there to contribute towards the study.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Kelly?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Mr. Farley's comments, it's a philosophical thing with him. It's basically, he does not want to see new roads built or improved. He wants money spent elsewhere, and that we can agree or disagree with the philosophical aspect of it. On the Rappahannock River crossing, having been involved in a lot of those discussions over the years, originally we had, 5 different options, of which I don't think any of them could be built now because of the level of development that's been done in the area. Even our Greenway project has now got a Lidl sitting right in front of it that we wanted to do with the crossing. I think it's also a situation where, in the grand scheme of things from a planning perspective, the cost of that project would be, we would basically have to sideline almost every single project we had on that list to make the money to put something together of that size and scope. That's really going to have to come from the state of the feds. And I'm not disagreeing with potentially the need. I'm looking, the western bypass making more sense than what we've been talking about for years, because frankly, we've developed beyond most of it. So while I understand the concern there a little bit, its impact on embarking on that now with the waste transportation funding, unless it changes dramatically anytime soon, which I don't see happening, that probably right now is a lift that we as FAMPO can't take. I'm just putting the cards on the table on that one. With all the other priorities we have and other issues we've got going, 610, Thornburg area down farther south, Massaponax area, continued improvements we do need on 95 to get it down to Massaponax. That right now is just not, it's going to throw everything into a major flux that I don't think is something we really want to deal with right now.
There are three things we would have to do if we wanted to proceed. I mean, putting it in the plan is the easy part, actually, even though it takes 6 months. It's the easy part. The hard part is designing it, finding where we can put it, which has been done multiple times, finding the money to pay for it, and then convincing all of your jurisdictions to all agree on those two items, where to put it and where to get the money. And it's not been achieved in the past. That's the hard part. I mean, I'll happily work to call together the air quality team and ask them to put it in the LRTP, but you first got to answer those other questions for me. Where do you want to put it? Get all three jurisdictions to vote yes, and agree where we're going to go to find the funding. If you can agree those three things, putting it in there, even though it takes 6 months, is a piece of cake. That's the easy. Putting it in the plan is the easy part. It's those other three things are the hard part, as I understand it anyway. I think there's another hand at that.
Just last comment, there was 3 points that was made, and that I think was believe on disability and issues like that, which is pretty much established by federal. I mean, we're not going to ignore it. In fact, we can't, because we have federal and state law that requires that we deal with those issues. So, in fact, even when it comes to pedestrian issues, I think any new project that VDOT does is required to have these components in the project. So it is now ingrained within the system anyway. I mean, if it just came down to adding a few words, that's fine. But again, the rules and regs are in place to deal with that issue by federal and state statute.
I think the issue is more of a prioritization of the projects themselves, which I think for this, I mean, the CLRP, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Olson, please correct me if I'm wrong here, but to reprioritize, these, to insert these projects, other projects would have to be removed.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That is correct, but one of the things that we were at pains to explain to the CTAC, Mr. Chairman of the CTAC, you might recall the exact date, I can't remember the exact date, we put in a lot of effort to explain that many of the roadway projects have also got a sidewalk attached to them, but it doesn't say sidewalk in the name, it just says road widening. And Stephen will tell you that when you go and look at the detail of their project, it includes a sidewalk or it includes ramps for wheelchairs or whatever. Ms. Lee did have a request that we look at things like audible traffic signals at intersections and prioritizing a couple of intersections, and I believe she even sent VDOT a list of where she thinks they should go. So, I mean, that's that kind of thing that she's...
Sure. So, yeah, the point I was trying to make, though, is that with the CLRP is that we, someone would have to then make a recommendation about what projects get removed.
Yes.
And that would be its own fight.
If you want to add one, you've got to take one away because we have to fit within fiscal constraint. This is the amount of money that's likely to be available. Therefore, we can have this dollar value's worth of projects, which we now have. And if you want to substitute and put one in, you have to take something to the same value out. Otherwise, we break the fiscal constraint requirement.
Exactly. So I would ask if CTAC has a recommendation for a new prioritization, we'd love to see that recommendation.
We'll do that. And I'm not going to speak for CTAC right now, but I will tell you that 8 lanes of interstate from Route 3 to Massaponax are immaterial if a fire on 95 shuts all the northbound, all the southbound traffic, or a dump truck does the same thing to the northbound traffic. There are 2 choke points in the region, Route 1 and 95. And no matter how many lanes you put on 95, there are still choke points. You're merely moving the choke point further north or further south. So we'll be happy to do that at our very next meeting, and we'll provide that recommendation to you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I was in a meeting with Mr. Ollis a couple of days ago. I'm here representing the Chamber of Commerce. Your business leaders have made themselves very clear on this particular issue. They absolutely have been looking for some movement towards another, I hate to use the word outer loop, but that's our bypass, but another crossway. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention that. It just came up in a meeting a couple of days ago, and they said, how do we let them know this is what we're thinking, and we got to talk about it. So they'd like to see that move forward.
Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Kelly.
Last comment on that. As Ian said, we can look into things. We could probably find some funding to do it. But the fact of the matter is, to say we wanted crossing with basically, I know most of the crossing sites that we looked at initially. I mean, we're basically going to be starting from scratch on this. And again, it's a situation of the cost associated to this is going to be so prohibitive for us, it's going to basically knock that list and all the other priorities off the table. That's why I kind of want, for you newer people, one of the things that was talked about in this policy committee board not too long ago was, why the hell are we responsible for Interstate 95 at all? It's an interstate highway system. We should be focusing on projects that are related to our localities as opposed to taking on interstate. But, you know, that's the way it is. And what has been said about 95 is correct. And we have been pounding the state for years on how far it should go, what projects should be to deal with some of those choke points. And it still ends up decision of the state and the feds on whether or not we can or cannot do it in those. And it'll be the same thing with this project. I just can't see bringing this thing to a whole screeching halt and trying to redesign a project that is now, I mean, I was here when we put the toll road authority together and other things to try to deal with some of these things. And that was well over a decade ago. And this is something where everybody wants it, but nobody knows where they want it. They don't know what it's going to cost. They have no concept of anything at this point, and you can't take that and stop a process like this until you have a lot more information that we don't have right now. Again, I don't necessarily disagree. You know, we talked about an outer connector. We've been talking about a western bypass as another project, which frankly, in the long term, makes more sense and is going to be more prohibitive to the costs and will have to be taken on by the state and feds. But at this point in the ballgame, to take this and all the other priorities and put it on hold for something that we're going to take, let me see, I think we spent almost 3 years, plus 3 years, 3 to 4 years, to put together some of the concepts for the outer connector plans we had initially, about that long, and put everything on hold to get to that point again and say, okay, we're ready to decide to put this in the plan. Just at this point in the ballgame, this does not make any sense.
I haven't yet made any comments on my view of the outer connector or the western bypass. I'm just dealing with the technical stuff now.
Sure.
And if you delay this LRTP, it's going to affect the support your jurisdictions need to apply for funding to a whole range of other things, because some of these projects are not in the 2045 LRTP. We delayed doing that update so that because we knew this one was coming, and we put a lot of effort into hurrying up and finishing this one so that you could get your projects into the LRTP so that you could apply for funding, which you're going to be doing this year. So there is a time constraint. But I'm not by any means saying we shouldn't be talking about these other options.
I understand. All right, last comment.
Last comment. I would submit that your citizenry will not accept that it's Putin's fault that there is no outer connector. And realizing it does take time and there are studies that need to be done, it needs to be started now. Action needs to be taken. We kicked this can down the road since 2013. The policy committee kicked the can down the road since last September, and it's time to get something started. And then I'll shut up.
Thank you. Ms. Bonke.
Mr. Chairman, I move for Resolution 22-29.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Ms. Bonke.
I would like to say that I do agree with Hank and with Mr. Milday and what you've said as well. But I believe we do need to look at this. We cannot just sit on the sidelines. We have to take this issue up. We don't have a choice in this area. Yesterday was a classic example. Leaving South Carolina, I looked, big accident in Thornburg. Northbound, southbound was already closed. So, I mean, and it's an everyday occurrence. You know, you probably 85% of the people in this room agree. You have to check where you're going that involves the interstate. So, anyway, I'd just like to say that, and I do agree that we have to look and study this.
All right, last comment on it. And I don't disagree with what Meg said, and I don't disagree that at some point you're going to have to look at it, but this project concept goes back to almost 2000. In fact, it started even before I came on council, and none of the jurisdictions could agree on it. We got 6 options. That got all ganged up. The city withdrew at one point its support I mean, it just went all over the place. Until you really have a concept and an idea and something that the board can support, and again, on the understanding that anything you put down there with an outer connector is going to have significant effect on the rest of the regional. I mean, this is really something where the state and feds need to step up. And, you know, we need to kind of, again, get out of some of these bigger-ized projects. It's just too much for us to handle with what resources we have available to us.
And the jurisdictions have to agree and not change their mind. Because if they start down the path and spend a lot of money and effort, and then one jurisdiction says, oh, no, sorry, we're out, man, then we just wasted.
Well, I don't have a problem if we start looking at what does something basic of where are the areas where we can do crossings now? Because, again, a lot of them are now gone.
So we are going to look at it. That would be good.
Mr. Yakubowski.
Thank you, and I don't mean to prolong this. I was hoping to get out here pretty quick, like, but I don't agree. I disagree with you at all, Matt. And unfortunately, that happened about 10 years ago. That it all fell apart because somebody had a hissy fit, and so that kind of stuff needs.
He's not here tonight.
But I don't want to hold up anything. But we absolutely do need to look at it. And I'm one of the ones that constantly says that we have a message that contradicts itself. We talk about economic development and wanting jobs here, but then we spend all of our money making it easier for commuters to get up to jobs in Northern Virginia. And so we don't spend money getting from Swansea to Stafford and over to King George and over to Caroline. These roads are the exact same roads that we've had for years, and we keep dumping more and more money into the interstate. And then when we do have a plan and we do have a landowner, we do have money identified, the federal government comes out and goes, oh, well, you're not fixing it enough when it comes to the J-ramp. And then they're the ones that squash it when we have already put all that time and effort into it. So quite honestly, federal government, I have no time for them. I'm responsible for my constituents, and once you get off that interstate, I want those roads to flow smoothly. 95, they can figure that out. They haven't yet. They keep building and doing whatever they can. They put in intersections. They redo them, constantly redo them. And I'm tired of us spending all of our time and spinning our wheels on that. I want to be able to get up to Stafford and see my friends up there and them to come down here and us to interact that way. That's what we should be focusing on. And even look out to the east now when you come to connections. And we got plenty of opportunities out that way too. So anyway, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right. Any further discussion?
So what did that mean? Vote for it or against it?
Oh, I'm voting for it because we need to get this moving. But I don't think this is the end of it.
Okay.
All right. It's time for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
Congratulations on finishing a 4-year long-range transportation plan.
Thank you. Moving on to item 9E, the FY 21 through 24 TIP update. Ms. Chandler.
Yeah, this is just to add 2 projects that we had last time for public comment, and Holly read the public comments earlier. There's no air quality conformity required, as these are already in an air quality conformity analysis. And the projects have gone through the public comment period, like I mentioned. Please take a vote to endorse those in development.
Meg, this is your park and ride lot you were asking about last time.
Oh, yes, it is. Yes, I'll move for resolution 22-30. It's over off of Route 17.
There you go.
There is a motion. There is a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
Well, it was the Spotsylvania Avenue improvement at the end that had thrown me a curveball.
Thank you.
It's 2 different projects.
Right.
All right, item 9F, approving BPAC at-large member appointment. Ms. Barber.
Yes, before you is a resolution to appoint Kevin Brown as an at-large member. Tim Ruby kindly nominated him for it, and attached to this and in your packet is his bio and statement of interest. If you'd like to peruse that. And I'll move it back to you.
Mr. Chair, I'll move 2231.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Item 9G, FAMPO support for Stafford County 2022 RAISE grant application. Mr. Ollis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You'll remember last year we did one of these for Spotsylvania County. It's just a letter of support for a project that they're going ahead with. It doesn't involve FAMPO money or FAMPO projects. And the Stafford County has asked us to do one for them this time around. They've asked us to have a letter of support endorsing their application for a raised grant for some particular roadway projects in their county. And so we put it to the policy committee if you'd like to support this letter of support for Stafford County.
All right, well, thank you.
Do we have the application?
We don't have the full application.
This is very vague. Like, I'd be interested in what are the opinions, or at least what are the votes.
That's what we were wondering.
We don't actually have the full detail. We got a very quick briefing at the last minute this past week. Because, well, no, there is a deadline to submit their application. That's next week. So they came to us in a bit of a hurry and said, start from the Stafford County, asking us please to do this meeting because their project application has to go in next week, so we couldn't delay it. So we in fact added this item to the agenda just before it went out. We did run it through by the chairman of the FAMPO Policy Committee before we added it to the pack.
I will note I am first vice chair.
It just concerns me that the staff board members don't know what.
I was going to ask if any of our Stafford delegation.
Stafford to tell us which way they want to go.
Exactly.
If somebody wants.
Well, actually, we do have some information, but I don't think everybody's had an opportunity to read the email.
Was that from Alex? Really?
Yes.
It's in a little bit of a
I asked him
hurry.
for more information on two of the things, but I did read it.
Do you have anything you could share with us?
Do you have the email?
Yes.
Do you want to just
Want me to read it?
He didn't write back.
read the name of the project?
You would.
In advance of tonight's FAMPO Policy Committee meeting, I wanted to provide you with some background on a couple of the items on
Well,
tonight's
She
agenda.
has some
No, but
background.
just go down under the raise, under this one, 9F.
9F.
Yeah, because the other's
Yeah,
CMAC
okay.
and,
I was
yeah.
just gonna give it, okay. Staff is submitting a raise grant funding application seeking approximately $1 million in funding that would go towards an expansion of the Transportation Master Plan, soon to be under development. The county is currently pursuing the creation of a Transportation Master Plan to serve as a blueprint that will guide transportation investment decisions and help inform policymakers and county residents of how transportation planning and engineering is performed at the local level. This master plan will be a living document that can be updated periodically per the dynamic and changing transportation needs and values of the community and in response to land use changes throughout the county. The plan will have a program of projects that will be in the form of prioritized list of projects which county staff can use when considering yearly grant application and CIP programming. The goal, are you good yet, or?
So this is funding your master plan, Chris?
It's
Yes.
assistance for
You good?
our transportation
Okay.
plan.
All right.
Not a particular road, is to determine what road.
It's a transportation comp plan, probably, something like that we've discussed.
Okay, Mr. Yakubowski?
Mr. Chairman, if Stafford is okay with it, I'm all in support of helping them get more money.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, and if this is to help you, build your plan, this sounds like a fairly benign.
Second.
All right, fantastic. We have a motion and approve. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries. Thank you. Item 9H, brief bylaw discussion, Mr. Ollis.
Thank you. There is not a lot of new information to tell you about these bylaw changes that you don't already know. At the last meeting, I was asked to specifically request that our letter to the Attorney General is sent to Tara Durand, the delegate to the Virginia Legislature, and ask her to request a legal opinion from the Attorney General, because the Attorney General does not give legal opinions to MPOs such as ourselves. I've done that. Ms. Durand and her office manager have submitted that to the Attorney General. It's been received by the Attorney General. The Attorney General has promised to come back to her office with information and I think a general legal opinion on the matter. but it has not been received yet. I'm in touch with that office, and they're waiting for the Attorney General's office to give us an opinion. They were not keen to give us the opinion. For various reasons. They say there's some federal laws involved, and they don't normally deal with federal laws. They referred us to FAMPO to try and get FAMPO to give an opinion. FAMPO is like 3 men and a dog with $5. It's not a big organization. It's not a big organization with extensive funds. They don't have an attorney on call, so they wouldn't be able to give us the kind of advice that you were looking for. I did contact FAMPO, and FAMPO said, does FAMPO and GWRC not have their own attorneys? So that's where we are.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you for that update. All right.
There's nothing new that I can tell you from that point of view. No. The chairman, not yourself, the regular chairman of FAMPO did want to make a decision tonight, but I leave that up to the policy committee.
Yeah, I know we don't really want to open this up too far, but have we sent it up to Mr. Rucker, let's at least get the feds to chime in? The big issue is the legality of the quorum issue and whether or not it would stand scrutiny, and that seems to be the real concern here. And I don't know whether or not we bounced it off them, because ultimately it is federal. Or do you think
I sent it to all the state delegates when I sent it to the Attorney General, and I think I copied Cedric Rucker, and I think
Ivan Rucker.
I can't tell you off the. Sorry, Cedric.
No, Cedric Rucker. You're right, but it's also Ivan Rucker.
I don't recall whether I sent it to Ivan Rucker as well. I might have copied it, CC'd him, but I don't know.
You might want to just give him a call and say, hey, it would be worth something to look at.
I will happily do that.
Okay, that's fine. I'm done.
All right. Moving on to item 9I, the future policy committee meeting schedule. So you can see we have the current FAMPO meeting calendar up there.
On the left.
And then GWRC on the right. There was, for those who weren't here at the last meeting, there was a discussion on whether to put FAMPO and GWRC together on the same night again. They have been taken apart. Now there's discussion about whether to put them back together. Do we have any discussion? Or Mr. Ellis, did you want to say?
So the dates on the left are what you approved in the calendar for the year. And then the proposal was made by a member last time to move them both back to the same day, which would mean you would do what you did tonight. You would have one meeting, have a break, then have another meeting. But that would mean that all the dates on the left you would have to cancel, and you would have to move those meetings to the dates on the right, because that would be the dates of the GWRC meeting, which would mean our meeting would start at around 7:30 and finish whenever you do the items.
Mr. Kelly.
Thanks, Chair. We had a relatively light meeting at GWRC tonight and still only had like 20 minutes left over. Based on the conversations at GWRC, we're now looking at really kind of expanding and doing a bunch of different things. The reason the two meetings were separated before is because you'd start a GWRC meeting, you'd start having a good discussion, and everybody's looking at the clock, and everybody's standing outside the door waiting for the FAMPO meeting in, and we'd always truncate the meetings to get into the FAMPO meeting. And if we're going to have some serious and good discussions going forward on regionalism, which frankly is extremely important to me, and we talk even, Chris and I talk even off between meetings and how important it can be for us. The GWRC needs to have the time and be able to have the time to have the discussions necessary to move forward. So I would really hope, and believe me, I serve on 9 different boards and commissions. I know it's, a bit of an issue, but I think it's important that GWRC keeps its own meeting nights so we have the time to have the discussions we need. There are going to be some interesting discussions, let's face it, coming up in the next few months that we've talked about over the last few meetings. So my recommendation would be is we leave them separate.
Could we get feedback from the GWRC as a whole regarding that?
There's
Would
one
that
day that
help
you have to
inform?
Well, some of you are the GWRC.
Right. No,
I don't know who all here.
So, Ms. Gary, you
If you're here and
Young are the only ones sitting at this table. I mean, I'm harder, but
Sure.
yes.
Do you mind if I have, since I was the chair and I was the whole reason behind the moving to separate them, and Matt did make a good explanation of it, but it turned a lot that the discussions, the agenda was too long because we were never completing our tasks because we had to finish because everybody from FAMPO was outside and you got to move along. And there seemed to be, I'm just going to use the word hate and get discontent, but there was some friction because it felt like things weren't being resolved and people did not have a chance to voice their opinion about very important issues. So by separating them, I felt that was a good way to be able that both boards could function better because you could have your time for discussion and for getting these issues resolved instead of constantly pushing them off to the next meeting because it was a truncated time. So I'll say from the one who kind of made the separation, that's why.
Thank you. One comment.
Yes, Ms. Young.
I'm looking up there, and there is a date that's similar on both.
The two that are on the same day, June 27th and November 28th, because the holidays, the Juneteenth holiday and then the Thanksgiving holiday.
So they have to be adjusted for public holidays.
Okay, and then I have another comment, and I don't mean this literally, so don't shoot me. But I was here just as a public servant at one of the meetings, and I noticed that there were a lot of information that could have been read before the meeting that was being read during the meeting. I'm not saying that that is one reason that you could try to read some information ahead before coming in, but that was my first meeting, and I was like, wow, how are they reading everything? They did not do their homework. So for those that are attending both meetings, is killing two birds with one stone. And we have to look at that also. Just a comment, just being,
Thank you.
I don't know about those.
I don't either. Give background.
All right, well, are there any further comments? Any motions? Ms. Bomke?
I'm kind of indifferent. I'm on both. I mean, I see both sides of it. There are some staff that are going to have to come to both meetings. Carrie. You. Yeah. And then when we have the different holidays in February and January, those are always on the same date, I think, aren't they?
And it's usually lighter, and the staff plans accordingly to have lighter meetings. I know Linda did when she was talking to GWRC, that was kind of a time where you kept it a little bit lighter because you knew you were going to be backing up.
Right.
But we're talking about having some serious discussions on the regional issues, and you can read it, you can do it and everything else like that, but what's been happening is we sit up here and we starting conversation and the chair goes, we don't have time, move on to the next item. And we would just cut the discussion and move on to something else. And that is just not the way we should be operating, especially on regional issues. So the other thing is don't serve on both.
April meeting is the public hearing, which is.
Which April meeting, the 18th or the 20th? But that's the GWRC.
All right, well, that one's already set, so.
And we have alternates, and we would have alternates come in if we were going to the meeting. I'm not worried about it. That's why we have alternates. So.
We can't tonight decide on the GWRC meeting date, so they may need to be alerted to that one, but we can decide on the FAMPO one.
I'd rather just leave it.
So we don't
leave it the way it is.
Just leave it the way it is for now.
All right, we'll move on from this item. Item 10, correspondence.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have one particular letter which we received from the Department of Rail and Public Transportation. They have appointed new members to our committees. There have been a slight shuffle to which one serves on which committee and so on. Those are the new members. We received the letter, and so we've made those amendments to our committee attendance register and the website, just alerting you to the fact that those are the new members.
Thank you. All right, item 11, staff and agency reports.
I've already introduced you to our new staff members, so I don't need to do that again. And we are basically fully staffed again for the first time in a couple of months. We had 3 resignations, we've appointed 3 full-time staff, so we're now up to 6 staff within our family.
Excellent.
Occasionally we have an intern, but our intern has just accepted a full-time position here on the 1st of, essentially the 1st of June. So then we will have 6.
All right, wonderful. Any other staff or agency reports? All right, any board member wish to make a comment? Mr. Kelly?
Okay. Ian, and I hope nobody would have a problem with this. At the next FAMPO meeting, could you at least give us a brief on if we were to begin looking at an outer connector, what would the process you would recommend that we follow? How about that? At least get the ball rolling.
And we'll provide, recommendations to FAMPO for offsets.
Wonderful.
Sorry to dump that on you, but again, not asking for any money allocation or just
Process.
this would be the process we would have to follow or look to follow.
All right.
It's the three things I spoke of earlier, but I'll put a little presentation together and I'll maybe ask Stephen to help me because he was so intimately involved in the last round of all of that.
Any other, board members?
Or Marcy.
Somewhere else doing all that. Even
Lucky.
She's gonna continue to be somewhere else.
She doesn't want to be.
All right. Do we have any other comments from the board? All right, hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks. You find us.
Carol.